Well, hey everybody, welcome to another episode, or I guess the first episode of Fast Trax Live. My name's Paul Abernathy, and I'm your host, and thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me as we start into this new series. I'm going to try to stick to a script, try to stick to schedule. Y'all know how hard that is for me. Anybody that's ever done anything with me as far as teaching and education, it's hard to stay on any kind of script, and I'm sure to get better as we get further in. Hey, I want to thank all of you for joining me. I know that you could be in many places here on a Wednesday night, but I'm excited to have you joining me here. If you're a Fast Trax student, remember, this is geared around you as well. So as I tell folks all the time, write things down and make sure you send it to me at least 24 hours in advance, and we can feature it on an upcoming episode, and I can answer your questions. If you got questions, I want to make sure that we answer it for you. As you probably guessed, Fast Fast Trax Live is a show that's going to be similar to Electrician Live, very structured. We are going to have guests from different industries coming on in the future. So that's going to be exciting as we work out that format. Again, patience with everybody. And I want to do some shout outs here in a little bit, talk about those that are joining me in the different features. We're available now on 11 different platforms. So if you like Facebook and you're in our National Electrical Collective, the NEC Collective, that's where we do a repository, then you can watch from there. If you are like the Master of the NEC, you can watch from there as well. YouTube, you can watch from there. We're also available over on Rumble. You can watch from there as well. But interesting enough, so that people can see the neatness of our new platforms, I wanted to show you actually what it looks like over on our platform that is over on Fast Trax Tube. Real quick, before we get deep, and I'm going to do some shout outs here, but I want to go over to it and kind of show you what that looks like. So here you can see this is what it looks like. This is so cool. This is what it looks like on Fast Trax Tube. If you haven't done it before and you want to watch our streams from here, all you got to do is go up here and click this live stream button. So you never have to worry anymore where the stream is at. You don't have to worry about, oh, do I go to Facebook or do I go to LinkedIn or do I go? If you want, just go to Fast Trax 2, click this right here, click this player, and boom, you can start watching live, okay? Just remember that it won't be live until the show starts at 7:30. But this is a neat feature and it reminds you down here, Fast Trax Live. So this is our unique player. It's very unique to us. And we are expanding in so many ways with different features. And I don't even think I've shared with Schwartzy all of the things that we got going on in the background. We're working on a new app that has nothing but quizzes. I'm telling you too much. I don't want to tell you too much too soon. So let me get back to me real quick. And we are going to be, I want to do a quick introduction. Again, my name is Paul Abernathy, if you're not familiar with who I am. I've been in the electrical industry for over 32 years at a master electrician level. I've probably taught, I think last we checked, I taught over 60,000 students through the years and in various different types of platforms. I like to say up front, I am by no means a know-it-all. Again, whatever my reputation may be, I learn something new every day. And I work a lot with the master electricians and journeyman electricians and apprentices who not only want to learn the National Electrical Code, but want to be able to apply it in the field. And it's a little different than an exam. Being able to apply it in the field means you still need to know how to maneuver a code book and things like that. So I answer an awful lot of questions for folks. Again, my name is Paul Abernathy, and hopefully you join me each week. You bookmark this, it becomes something you come to. It is going to evolve. And if you have any suggestions for upcoming features on the show, please do me a favor. I want this to be entertaining for you. So all you've got to do is send us an email. And you can do it straight from our website. Just send us an email. Okay. So let me talk about a little bit of what we're going to be talking about tonight. In tonight's show. I've got two questions that were submitted to me through the Let's Ask Paul portal over at paulabernathy.com. And if you don't know what that is where we are moving towards taking all of the questions that are asked of me through that portal. Rather than, you got to remember now, I have multiple emails, whether it's paulabernathy.com at Electrical Code Academy, whether it's info at Electrical Code Academy, Paul Abernathy at Fast Trax System, info. We've got tons of emails, okay? So what we've tried to do is coordinate it so that I have an easy place for you to be able to ask questions. And all you got to do is go to paulabernathy.com. It's a simple portal, and that's the best way to ask any question you want. It doesn't matter what it is. You won't hurt my feelings. Just ask away, and I want to be able to answer those questions for you. Okay? So now, tonight we're going to look at a couple things first. First, I want to give a quick recap of the construction industry and some of the data that came out. Now, 2022 data is still being compiled, but we have some data from 2021, and it's forward looking into 2031, which talks about the electrical industry and a couple other the trades and in some of the median income, which again is right in the middle of the road. For those out there who are wondering or starting into this journey and they're wondering, is being an electrician for me? Hopefully I'm going to convince you during the Fast Trax Live and in future episodes that this is the most amazing trade in the world. I'm obviously biased because I'm an electrician, and people question that. They're like, boy, you just a teacher. You never did it. Well, okay, whatever makes you feel good. But reality is I've been in this trade a long time, and I was blessed to be able to work with my brother, who is, an amazing guy. And I have two brothers, and they're both amazing. But my brother, that's an electrician, is an amazing guy too. And I'm his code guy, obviously, calls me for code. But I can tell you, if I have to make something work, right, when my air conditioning's not working or something's not working, you better know who I call, right? I call my brother. Now, he is the MacGyver of everything. But he's a great electrician, but he does everything else. So, but at any rate, we want to look at some construction info because I want to see where the industry is going. But let me give some shout outs real quick because I do need to give some shout outs because I don't have it up so you can see the chatters right yet. But I do want to give up some shout outs to everybody. Oscar is in the room. Appreciate you coming, Oscar. Swartzy, as always, my rock. He's always there. Yane and Nikki, thanks for joining me. John, again, I recognize some faces from our Fast Trax program. Dustin as well. Juan Gonzalez. We've got Tim Johnson, Code Strong. Tim's in there. And we got Matt Troy coming. So Gloria. Boy, we got tons of people coming in tonight. So great. Keep letting me know where you're from and how you're doing. Let's see here. Matt says, I would agree that electrical being the best. I've done them all, and electrical is where I stay. 100%. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and look at some data real quick. Okay, so we've got this data. May or may not be hard for you to see on the screen, but this is the recent statistics, most recent that I can grab from the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Russ, welcome, Russ, to the chat tonight. So this is kind of some information on the industry. So you're wondering on how the industry, what's the outlook? Okay. What's the outlook for our industry? Well, kind of interesting. If you look at it right here, and I go down, you remember there was a time when people thought that the inspectors didn't make a whole lot, or that maybe that was, and I remember when we were paying our inspectors not a lot to be an inspector, and it wasn't necessarily a career. But now being an inspector is legit a career. And I know that some of the inspectors that worked for me back in Alexandria, Virginia, they were making $80,000 and $90,000. Obviously, the cost of living, but they were doing amazing. And the electricians were doing amazing there too. But if we look here at some of these statistics, and I'll call them out because it is hard for you to see it probably, depending on the device you're looking at. But I just want to reassure you, before we get into this Fast Trax Live series, which is going to be amazing, we're going to have a lot of good stuff coming. Some giveaways that I've got planned coming down the road too. But I wanted to show you how rock solid I feel our industry is, all right? So if you go kind of down this list and you'll see, and I'm going to kind of stop right here first. So this is construction and building inspectors. Again, you can get in this industry with a high school diploma. You don't need a college degree. And $61,640. And now that's a median. That's a middle of the road. I know inspectors that are making almost twice that, depending on where you're at in the country. So that is amazing if you think about taking the construction trade or inspections and turning it into a livelihood. So inspections used to be one of those things where people would say, well, you can't do anymore, so you're an inspector. They say that about educators too. You can't educate anymore, so you're a teacher. Or you can't do it anymore, so you teach. Okay, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's great to see the income levels for the construction inspectors, electrical inspectors, and building inspectors starting to get so well. And so you see it's $61,000. And what strikes me here is the median income, which takes an average. If you look at it compared to electricians, here's electricians right here, okay? Electricians, $60,000 and $40. Now, I know some electricians that make far more than that. But, you know, in many parts of the country, you know, you can live very fine on $60,000. And if you have a spouse that's, you know, working as well, then shoot, you put that together, you know, you can make some great money. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I think it's used to be where it was the man was the income winner, you know, bringing the income in, and the wife took care of the house, but that's totally changed now. The careers of women in inspections and electricians, like over on TikTok, you got this Lexi, who's a woman electrician who does a lot of work and posts a lot of her stuff. I ain't gonna lie, she ain't bad to look at either. Uh-oh. You get in trouble for that, probably get hate mail for that, but she does great work too, so it's neat to watch that. Dude, I'm a guy. I mean, come on. So anyway, I think it's pretty neat. So let's kind of dig into real quick some of this electricians data and see what we can see. So basically taking the averages, just so you can kind of have an idea before we get into the code stuff, kind of an idea where our industry is going. Number of electrician jobs in 2021, and we don't have all the data for 2022 yet published. It's 711,200. The outlook for electricians, which is quite great, the outlook for electricians looks like it's going to be a 7% increase. So there's a lot of room out there. And if you think of that, 7% is fine of a growth, right? So, you know, you're going to have some that retire and you got new ones coming in. So learning the trade. So that's going to be an amazing thing. Now, the rate of pay, people ask me all the time, well, what is the average pay for an electrician, depending on where you're at in the country? You know, $28 to $35 an hour for the electrician, not the contractor who's going to have to worry about burdens and overheads. And we're also going to have shows on that too, folks. In the next couple episodes, I'm going to try to get together with somebody that can actually join me on a show to show you how to do bidding and softwares and things like that. So that ought to be cool. I'm trying to work that out, but we'll see if we can't get that on the show. And he literally wrote the book on estimating. So hopefully if he's watching, I'm going to be calling you. I want to get you on this show. So what we're doing is we're making a list of people we want to have. And there's a friend of mine who does bidding full time is somebody that I would holler out to be on the show. Interesting thing here that I would say is that 28 to, let's say, 35 window is about the normal median hourly pay. So I think that is pretty good considering usually the owner, it's almost double that, but then they have to have the burdens. But as an electrician itself, that's pretty good level of pay. As it said, is about 60,000 is the average. I don't know what you make, but that's about the 60,000. That's what they're talking about. And again, the 7% growth. So about 79,900 openings for electricians are projected each year. 79,000. Now, this isn't my data. Okay. This is statistical data online from the Department of Labor. Okay. And so plenty of opportunities for anybody out there who wants to become an electrician. We've got opportunity. And I would imagine the pay is only going to go up. Let's just hope we don't go into a recession. All right, so that's pretty good, 79,900. These statistics, again, I should mention, are all available from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can find them online. And again, this was updated May 15th, so none of this data is for 2022. But I would imagine it would be close to the same, pretty much in that same 7% uptick. But again, 79,900 jobs. And I'll tell you what, I ride around Dallas and even here where I'm at in McKinney, Texas. And I can tell you what, building is booming. I don't know about your area, but the good thing about electricians is they're very highly skilled, right? And we need that skilled labor That's why I believe in vocational schools. That's why I believe you don't need a college degree in order to own your own business, be your own boss, if that's what you want to do, or lead jobs or whatever. So, I mean, amazing opportunities as an electrician. Okay. All right. So again, that's my pitch to the electrical industry. There's plenty of opportunity for you out there, folks. Okay. Now, next thing that I want to go is, okay, so we're going to kind of go into a little lesson, right? So I want to go into, I get code questions from time to time. And again, they're all sent to me through paulabernathy.com. So we're going to do the first part of this segment. We're going to do a little main content code and look at a question that was submitted. If you have any comments, feel free to comment in the chat, and I'm more than happy to elaborate on anything. But we're going to go look at that and see what we got going on for the lesson. Okay. So when we think about this lesson, we're going to go into the very first one. Now, guys, I know this may be hard for you to see. I know it's hard for me to see. So I'm going to be looking at it on my phone. You can look at it on the screen. I'm going to look at it on the phone because I can't see very well. So bear with me. I'm getting old. All right. It says, "Hi, Paul. I listened to your podcast and have a question on the 2020 update to 250.68C3. He says, so in Florida, many times I have seen a ground footing with continuous number 4 or 5 rebar set at 3-foot stands inside a footing trench with applicable laps tied with wire ties as per the engineering drawings, obviously. Vapor barrier is removed a minimum of 20 feet from the footer below where the panel will be set, and then additional piece of number 4 rebar will be tied on with tie wires on the foundational system for 5 feet surrounded in concrete, which is in direct contact with the earth, and then makes a 90-degree stub up into the wall. He says, are you saying this stub up piece can no longer consist of rebar, or that you can no longer stub up into the wall using any material? I've also seen folks do the same technique, but with bare galvanized steel ground rods as the piece stub up. I do not believe the ground rod could be appropriate, but is the 1/2-inch diameter rebar no longer either? Okay. All right, so that's the question that was submitted to me. One of them. We got 2 today. The second one's a biggie, so we'll get to that one. Okay, let me answer this question for you first. To answer this, I need to clarify a couple things for the submitter. If y'all are still reading it, this is straight from his email. Okay? I think what you're confusing is in the 2020 code, they made it clear that the rebar itself in your foundation could not be used to interconnect different electrodes. Right? So the reference here to 250.68C3 is just talking about making the connection from the grounding electrode conductor to this rebar. Okay, 2 different things. So in the 2020 code, if I've got a water heater on one side, water heater, a underground water line on one side of the building, and my service is on the other side, and I have a concrete cased electrode system, and the water heater's on the other side, and you're thinking, you know what? Why don't I just go from that water heater and make a connection down to the rebar? Because the rebar is going back, and that's connected to the panel. Well, prior to the 2020, you could do that. You could use the rebar. You can't do that anymore. So you can't use the rebar as a conductor to interconnect your electrodes. Now, that's not the reference you gave. 250.68C3 is the reference to making a connection to that rebar. All right, so that's what we're going to go look at so we can make sure that's clear. So just remember, folks, in the 2020, you cannot use the rebar that is the UFER in the concrete as an interconnected conductor to connect other electrodes together. You can't do that. Now, even though we're going to go look at the code, the short answer for the gentleman is, hold on, I done lost everything on my screen again here. The short answer for the code is, and I don't know if it lost it for you folks, but the short answer is yes, you can still use the rebar And number 4 is equivalent to 1/2 inch, and it can stub up, and you can make that connection, and it would have to be accessible if you do that above grade. Now, it can't be outside in a corrosive environment, but if it's in the wall and you have access to it with an access panel, then you're perfectly fine. Otherwise, you know what? You could go from your panel all the way down and make a connection to the rebar that's in the actual footing if you want, and that doesn't have to be accessible, right? But this question was about the stub up, and it didn't go away. You can still stub it up. That is not a problem. So let's kind of look at that in the code real quick. And I know, Mikey, I'm going to tell you what, brand new computer, all of a sudden my screens all went black for a second and came back. I don't think it's the computer. I think it's the switcher that I'm using. That's a problem, okay? We're going to have to get that fixed because that would drive me crazy, all right? Okay, so here we're going to kind of take this question and we're going to go back to the code. All right, so this is what he's talking about. 250 right here, that's 68. And he's talking about C right here. Now, this is the information you see all grayed out or browned out or whatever you want to call it. So that's what your concern was about. But let me read this to you. It says right here, and I can even zoom this in, make it a little easier to see, if that makes it easier for C, okay? Could be the user. Yeah. Watch it, Mike. All right, so number 3, it says a rebar. No, I swear, Mike, all the monitors and everything just went black for a second, and then it comes back on about 2 seconds later. I swear it's that stupid switcher. I'm telling you. All right, so it says a rebar type concrete cased electrode installed in accordance with 250.52A3. So that means you've installed a properly done UFER or concrete cased electrode. You've done it properly, right? So it assumes that it is in fact an electrode. And based on the gentleman's question, they actually cut the vapor barrier so that they got that 20 feet in contact with the earth. So, okay, so they've got a UFER. Good, all right? So assuming it met 250.52A3, now it says, with an additional rebar section extending from its location within the concrete foundation or footing to an accessible location that is not subject to corrosion, okay? Thank you, Ryan, for subscribing. Got the little dude that jumps up on the screen for those that are subscribers. Thank you, Ryan, for joining. So not subject to corrosion, shall be permitted. That also means not outside, okay? It needs to be inside, not outside where it would be subject to such a corrosion. It says, shall be permitted to be connected to grounding electrode conductors and bonding jumpers in accordance with the following, okay? So it's your C connector on your desktop. All right, Gloria, I'd love you to send me an email about how I disable that. That would be amazing if you could. I don't know how to do that. I'm not that computer savvy, okay? All right, but I'd love to turn the anything off. I'm gonna burn some energy when I'm doing streaming, buddy. I don't care about this energy savings garbage, okay? But love you to send me an email. Support, SUPPORT, at fasttracksystem.com. I would love it. And if you do, Gloria, I will give you a free annual membership over to fasttrackstube.com just for doing that for me. Okay? Get a free $125 value for free. All right. All right, so that's where we're at, okay? So here's this says, oh, well, we're picky, Gloria. We don't let people in our system remotely. So if you know the process of turning off that Energy Star setting, I love it, okay? It does do it after a while, though. It seems to while, then it'll do it, and then it waits a while, then it'll do it again. I'm sorry. I digress, folks. Y'all know me. I can't stay, Michael will tell you, I can't stay focused. All right, so this is talking about turning up that rebar. So it says, the additional rebar section shall be continuous with the grounding electrode rebar, or shall be connected to the grounding electrode rebar and connected together by usual steel tie wires, exothermic welding, or other effective means. Okay, so the gentleman that sent me the question, if I want to take rebar and I want to tie it to the rebar that's part of the UFR, and I want to turn it and extend it up to an accessible point in the building. In fact, a lot of times it's just in your garage or wherever your panel is. They'll poke it up right there, all right? If that's the method they're going to use. And then it's there, so that's there, okay? And then we have the rebar extension, that's the piece that's sticking up, shall not be exposed to contact with the earth without corrosion protection, okay? Don't want it to be out, contact with the earth, makes sense. And then it says, rebar shall not be used as a, now listen, rebar shall not be used as a conductor to interconnect the electrodes of grounding electrode systems, right? So that was significant because, again, if I have a water pipe ground, let's say in the front of the building, and my panel's in the back of the building, and I have a concrete case electrode, and we know that 250.50 says I have to tie all those electrodes together, right? Well, I can't just drop down anymore to use the UFR for this. Now, if I had building steel that qualifies, I could use it, things like that, or I can run a wire all the way to it, but I just can't use the UFR, okay, for that. So pretty clear. So that was the only change there, significant for folks. You still can turn up the rebar. That's fine. No problem with the rebar doing that at all. Also, just for anecdotal, the question asked about ground rods. If the ground rod is a half-inch ground rod and you want to take it down and you want to tie it to the rebar, I certainly would have no problem with that either, personally. Okay? You're not using the ground rod as the rod, but if it meets the half-inch diameter, I probably wouldn't have any problem with it. Okay? That's me. Check with your local AHJ. Some people want to dig into the weeds and say, no, no, no. But wait a minute. If the ground rod's good enough for this connection and it's at least half-inch, okay? But you do you, okay? All right. And to prove the rebar being what it is, I wanted to just show you. You can go to the U.S. Concrete Products Institute, I guess, and here's your rebar chart, and here's the number 4, and here the diameter is 0.50 in inches, so it's a half-inch. So that's the rebar for that application, okay? All right. So we're in between code questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the floor and I'm going to see if anybody has any questions before we get back into part 2 and we get into some more lessons. So I'm going to see if this works here. So chatting away, does anybody have any questions about that first part of that, what we talked about that you want to ask about? This is kind of a intermission right here at the halfway point of this show, and I want to ask, you got anything you want to ask or questions? Feel free to do so, whether it's about the Fast Trax program, about how we're going to do things moving forward, whatever you want to ask. This is my intermission, and I like to do it for a few more minutes, and then we'll move on into part 2, which is another. Now, this one is going to be a much more complicated code question, because it talks about what methods do I recommend if you have an existing dwelling and you're going to be adding other loads to the dwelling, things like that. So how do you figure that out? So that's going to be in the second part of the episode, okay? So absolutely, John, go ahead. Ask a question about it right now. If you want, you have a certain question, we can most certainly go look at it. Absolutely. What's your question? And folks that are tuning in, Fast Trax Wednesdays that we used to do private. Now remember, John, the rule was you're supposed to send your questions within 24 hours of the show. Okay? So remember that. Okay? Supposed to send whatever question you have, send it ahead of time so that I can have the question in a format that everybody can see. Okay? Just moving forward, this is a good lesson for all the Fast Track students. I want to make sure that I can able to frame it a little bit better, because when I start going to different pages, it could get wonky on me. And I'm going to say this: I'm a little rusty from my live stuff back when I did Electrician Live for years. I'm a little rusty on shifters and my switchers and stuff like that, so bear with me. All right, John, let's see what we got. All right, you're in Unit 18. Looks like question 17. It says a 15 ampere duplex receptacle installed in a television audience seating area can be supplied by a blank ampere branch circuit. Okay, so looks like Unit 18, question number 17. Now, is this in the actual material, or is this in the practice exams? Is it number 17 in the practice exam, or what is it in? Because I wasn't sure. Oh, oops, wait a minute, folks. I lost my screen here. Hold on, lost my screen. All right. All right, so it's in the review. Okay, well, let's see if I can go over to that. Give me a second while y'all read the question, and I'll see if I can't get over to the material. And bear with me. That's why, John, I like to have them in advance, so I make sure that I have it. Now, if you have other random questions, people that aren't course related, and you can feel free to post them now in this intermission while I go and look up John. Now, John, you're in the 2020 edition? Is that correct? Double check here while I go get this loaded for you, John. I assume you're in the 2020 edition. Yes, sweet. Okay, cool. Just bear with me here. J. Caesar, thanks for subscribing. Let me go, John, and load this up for you. And if anybody has got any other questions, please feel free to ask, and I will try to tackle them. All right, here, John, let's see here if I can find this real quick. Bear with me. If I'm having trouble finding. Hold on here. Bear with me, John, while I find it for you. I don't know why it's not coming up. Hold on for a second, John. Anybody got any other questions while I'm doing this for John? Just please do it. Let's see, John, I'm trying to work it here. All right, John. I think I've got it. Hold on here. All right, so let me see here. Greetings, JW. All right, John, it is, let me scroll back real quick. Unit 18, question 17. Bear with me real quick, and I'll get to it, and then I'll share that screen. Bear with me. Will I load it? As you can see, John, this is why I did not want to, that's why I wanted you guys to send them in advance. Okay. All right. Let me go over here. It's all good, bro. It's all good, bro. We're in, all right, so let's see. Black here, and John, let me see if I can't find the unit 20. Unit 1920. All right, John, it was Unit 18, and we're going to the review. Okay, I'm going to share the review with everybody. Okay, so let's go to the review. Okay. Gloria, is there international training? Is there a Fast Trax? Is there a Fast Trax on becoming a trainer? No, we don't do international. Thanks, John. We do not. I don't do Canadian codes, and we don't do anything outside of the U.S. For that. All right, John. So here we go. So which question was it? It is question 17. This one right here. Okay, right here, folks. Okay. So for all those that aren't familiar, we're we have what's called a Fast Trax program. John is in our program, and I personally review all of these questions. And I don't know if John has sent it or not, or if I've reviewed it or not. I do reviews Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. Most people know. And I'm a little behind today for obvious reasons. Also, I had an x-ray on my shoulder today, and I do not have rotator cuff. So I don't have to go under the knife. That's a good thing, because I don't like going under the knife. All right, let's see, John, what we got. It says a receptacle duplex installed in a television audience seating area can be supplied by a blank ampere brand circuit. Okay, so John, when I look at this question, and I know, folks, it's hard to see on the screen, but you can see it on the chat. I'm going to be looking at what? So I'm going to go to the National Electrical Code here, and I'm going to back up. And so the first thing that I think of when I see this question is obviously it's a special occupation, right? So it's going to be in Chapter 5. Now, the moment I look at it, we're talking about theater, audience areas, and if you look at the question, if I go back to the question here, it's talking about television audience seating. So it's the audience area, and it's dealing with television, okay? So that would be my triggers for that, right? And so I'm going to go down here, and I'm thinking theaters here, motion and picture and television studios, those type of things. So that's where I'm going to be. Now, interesting thing about this one is it is not really big. Now, I could have gone to the index and looked under television, and I don't know. Y'all know that I can't, this index, we don't have an index here for the link. But I would have been drawn to television, right? And then once you go to television, we're basically looking at, okay, well, what are the allowances in here? What can I have when I'm looking at it? So I'm going to go to 520.1. Here's the scope. What does it cover? This order covers all buildings that are part of a building or structure, indoor or outdoor, designed and used for presentations, dramatic, musical, motion picture, projection, or similar purposes, and to specific audience seating areas within motion picture and television studios. Okay, so that would have drawn me here to this area. And obviously this is a 2020. It's got some definitions here that are unique to this, all right? So then we would have gone down, and I would have bold scanned down and looked for what I'm looking for in the answers, right? When I start scanning through things like that, right? So I've got here branch circuits. It says a branch circuit of any size supplying one or more receptacles. Okay, so that was kind of what we're talking about, right? A duplex receptacle, it's a 15 amp, shall be permitted to supply a stage set lighting. The voltage rating of the receptacles shall be not less than this circuit voltage, okay, whatever it is, 120, that type of thing. Receptacle ampere ratings and branch circuit conductor ampacity shall not be less than the branch circuit O current protected device rating. All right, so when we're looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, what are my choices? And it basically can't be less than. So we got to go back and look at the question now that we read that. I can get back to the question. All right, so 15 ampere duplex receptacle, seating area can supply by a blank 15, 20, or 30. 15, 20, or 30. So John, you're in the review. You're in the room. You're on the hot seat. I'm putting you on the hot seat. Okay? What do you think? What's your answer? Need me to go back? Okay, let's go back. I'll take you back. Well, you remember the answer. Then it says that it can't, well, if it's a 15 amp, obviously it can't be on a 20 amp branch circuit, John, in this scenario. This is unique. Remember, this is Chapter 5. It supplements and modifies any chapters 1 through 7, right? So the answer here is B. It could only be on a 15 amp circuit, okay? This is very unique to the application, and it's doing what? Chapter 5 is what? It's supplementing and modifying chapters 1 through 7. And of course, what you're thinking about is 210.21 and all that, right? So here, because of that language, the rating of the circuit is 15. The duplex is 15, so the circuit has to be 15. I wouldn't be allowed to put that 15 on a 20, okay? Now, there's other places in the code, like kitchens and things like that, that I could, but not in this theater. It's very clear here. So the answer is B, and it would be I, 15 for this answer, okay? Now, if you go back and again, we'll look at the code right here. Receptacle ratings in branch circuit conductor ampacity shall not be less than the branch circuit overcurrent protected device, right? But we still have to protect that device, okay? Now, let's see here. We got some expansion. Is there anything down here that wants to give us any additional info? Probably not. Let's see here. Yeah, but John, why would I put a 20 on a 15 in the theater application or the 30? If the device is only rated 15 amperes, I don't have the same permission up there. Remember, it supplements and modifies. Now, it could be other ampere ratings, but this is about a 15 amps duplex receptacle. So it's a 15 amp. Then what do? Now remember, here's something else to remember, John. In the kitchen, on a 20 amp circuit, I can use a 15 or 20 amp rated device, correct? Correct? Yes or no? This is all for John, folks. And this is what Fast Trax Wednesday is going to be able to do. We're still going to be able to interact. But I would have had a long explanation for you, John. All right, so John, answer this question. Yes. Okay. So now let's leave the kitchen. Or if we go back and look on it, what does it say a 15 amp circuit has to be protected with? Or what size of the receptacle is a 15 amp? Remember what we did in 210.21? Let's go look at it real quick. It'll all start to come together for you. So let's go to 210.21. And we'll go down here. Okay. Let's see here. This cord and plug, that's maximum. So here's our ratings. Okay, let me pop this on the screen. I think you can see this. So it was a 15 amp rated circuit, and the receptacle rating is not over 15 amps. Remember, Chapter 5 can supplement and modify. But the golden rule back in 210 is that a 15 amp circuit, okay, we didn't say it was a 20 amp circuit. It was a 15 amp receptacle. Okay, so it's typically going to be not over 15. It's a 15 amp rated receptacle on a 15. It didn't say anything else about it. So if it's a 15 amp rated receptacle, we're going to assume 15 amp rated circuit, okay, for that application. Why wouldn't it? Because again, this is the rules that are in 520. Okay, so it's telling you in the question. It says, so a 15 amp duplex receptacle installed in a television on it, not in a kitchen, not in 210, even though we just went there to kind of look at it. Here, the application is, well, it's a 15 amp rated receptacle and it's being installed in this specific area. It can be supplied by so are you telling me, John, that a 20 amp circuit can supply that 15 amp receptacle? Well, it can in 210, but not here in 520, okay? So in a 30, obviously wouldn't be utilized, the circuit wouldn't be for 15, that type of thing. So it's all just based on the language of 520 and what you have, okay? Now, I could argue, if it wasn't for 520, then I could argue that, well, doesn't the rules we just saw in 210 say that if it's a 20 amp branch circuit, that I can have a 15 amp rated device, right? But does that, does that mean what? That here in 520, that's a permitted application? I don't believe it is, okay? So The best I can answer it for you, John. But if you want to put a 20 amp circuit on that and follow the rules in 210 and nobody gives you any flack about it, then go for it. Okay? Type of thing. So let's see here. Let me go. Oops. Let's go back here. All right. So this are these rules here. Let's pop back. Let me look at the time so I can get back on this other topic real quick. 5:20. And we'll go back to here. Okay. All right. So let's read this. Let's read this again and dissect. So, because notice it gives you here, right? Read this line for me, John. I'm going to zoom up for you. I don't know if it tears up my screen, folks, so y'all got to let me know. This is all new. What does it say right here? And then make sure when you read it, John, you let me know what I was kind of making it clear. Remember how I said chapter 5 can modify, supplement, and change. You see what it says down in the other, right? For a 20 amp rated circuit using a 15 amp device. You see that, right? Now read that sentence on the screen that's in highlights. And then tell me if it makes sense. So the receptacle rating and the branch circuit conductor shall not be less than the branch circuit rating. So it can't be less than 15. So it is at least 15. Now you're saying, well, hey, 210.21 says that I can do something like that. Right? So I don't know, John. If you want to put it on a 20 amp go for it. But that's the answer we have, and I'm going to go with the rating of the receptacle. It can't be less than. Okay, so I'm never going to assume more. If it's a 15 amp rated device and I can't be less than that, my answer is always going to be the 15 amp rated device. Okay, and I'll click on B, right? And B2 is trying to protect us in a sense also, not that it's looking at B3, but it's also in a sense that that's a receptacle in that audience area designed for what? Cord and plug connected loads, right? So it just reminds us, again, do it. But here it says 15 or 20, and it's 15. So if you think the answer is 15 or 20, submit that on your review. Go for it. I can see your argument. All right. I can't read all that. 20 ampere, but that's why the wording throws me off. Well, it is poor wording because it's excluding it for these loads in B2, right? For these loads, because it's basically just trying to limit the one. But again, it's the whole B2 is thrown out. You can't use it. So we're end up using B3 because is what you're talking about here. And it just basically says a 15 amp branch circuit has to have not over 15. Okay, so it is ignoring the other stuff, the B2, like you said. Why is my hand going above my thing? It's ignoring B2, but B3, which you're saying it doesn't ignore, states that a 15 amp circuit is to not over 15, but you're saying that the receptacle is 15. Why couldn't it be on a 20 amp circuit? Oh, what does Dustin say? Oh, 530? We're not in 530, but that's probably kind of the same language. But John, we'll look at that. Maybe that is something that needs to be addressed. But I'm going to go with 15 and a 15 for protection. Let's see here. And I probably would have done the research on that history of that, John, if I had had it in advance. All right, now I'm totally off of where I was supposed to go here, John. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. But keep writing the questions. I'm going to go back to the lesson real quick because I got to finish this lesson for the individual that submitted it. All right, let's see here. And maybe I won't mark it wrong for you, John. Maybe I'll mark it right. All right. Next question was asked, what is the process got making sure adding, all right, again, I take this straight from what was submitted to me. So what is the process got making sure adding an additional load such as an EV charger or even an RDP residential distribution panel or sub panel to an existing dwelling? How do we know if the existing panel can handle the additional load? Okay, well, so I guess the question is, you have an existing panel and you want to be adding additional loads to it. You're saying, okay, well, how do I know the additional loads like an EV charger or something, or if I'm installing another separate remote distribution panel and I'll be adding loads to it, how do I know that I'm not exceeding what the capacity is of the service itself? So what load calculation do I have to do? Well, two things, well, actually three approaches you can try on this. The first thing, that this is not really for an exam, this is in the real world, it's existing. So one of the things you can do is redo the entire calculation with your new loads and use the optional method in 220.82 and calculate it out using the optional method and go around and get all your information together. You could do that as well. Or you could use the allowance in 220.83, and that would be for existing loads. And so for this lesson, say we want to make sure it's, what did you say? I put the wrong letter down anyways, so it's wrong. Well, we might mark it right. You never know. I haven't graded today, so again, apologize to guys. I had doctor's appointment, so I haven't graded. All right, so let's look at this question real quick and a little more. So let me go real quick down here. Okay, so what does 220.83 say for existing dwelling units? It says this section shall be permitted to be used in lieu of doing a full calculation again, doing the optional method in 220.82, or doing a standard calculation all over again to size it. It's existing. It's already there. So it says this section shall be permitted to be used to determine if the existing service or feeder is of sufficient capacity to serve additional loads. Where the dwelling unit is served by a 120/240 volt or a 208Y120 volt 3-wire service or feeder, calculating the total load in accordance with 220.83A or B shall be permitted. So the whole concept here is you've got an existing service and you want to know what you can add to it. Right? So this is one of the methods. Again, I could go and take down all of the appliances, do the square footage, and do everything as if it was a new dwelling, even though it's existing, and then just add my new loads into my calculation. And I could do that if I wanted. It's probably one of the easier ways to do it. Just kind of walk around and gather your information, your square footage, and do it, because you're going to have to do most of that anyway here. But I could do that. But if I'm using this method, then I got to follow 220.83A or B. Now, the difference is A means there's no HVAC or heating is going to be new added, maybe just the additional loads. And then B says, well, are you also adding some heating or some air conditioning? And if you're not, then you stick in A. If you are adding additional air conditioning or heating, maybe you're adding an extension, another room or something, and you're adding AC to the loads, then you would turn around and have to use B for that. But we've got it broken down, so I'll let you look at it here. Okay, so what's the difference? As you can see on the screen, 220.83A is where additional air conditioning equipment or space heating equipment is not to be installed. They're not going to put any extra than what's already in the dwelling itself. It's already there. Now, B is where you would be adding some air conditioning equipment or space heating equipment to be installed. Now, it says the percentages listed in table 220.83B shall be used for existing and the additional loads. The larger connected load of the air conditioning or the space heating, but not both, shall be used. Okay, so we're going to look at it in an example to kind of hammer it home. So here's what it says in 220.83a. You see that it tells us that you take the first 8 kVA of the load at 100%, and then you take the remainder at 40%. But what do you got to do? You still got to go around and get together all of your information, right? I got to get together on my loads. I got to know the square footage, all of my appliance nameplates, range nameplate, all this, because we're still doing an optional, right? So what you do is you have to do your general lighting and general use, as you're all familiar with. It's 3 VA per square foot. That's in 220.42. Then you have 1500 VA for each small appliance branch circuit and laundry circuit. Then you have the nameplate of all of the fastened in place, permanently connected, or located for a circuit that's on some specific circuit for some specific load, whatever that may be, right? And of course, that's the nameplate of that. And the ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted, you're just simply taking the nameplate. And the ranges, dryers that are not connected to the laundry circuit, as again, that would be just like the washing machine is already covered in the 1500 VA. So anything additional like clothes dryer, that would be, you'd have to take that nameplate as well. If you have a clothes dryer, by the way. And then, of course, water heater loads. Now, a lot of people ask here when they're doing this one, they say, well, if I'm going to be adding additional load, and we're going to see an example here, but if I add an additional load, do I take into account the existing air conditioning and heating? And the answer to that, in my opinion, is absolutely yes, you do. And you're going to treat that, and it's going to fall under the appliance. So that's 3A. So you're going to take the nameplate. Now, what sometimes get confusing with the code, just like when we looked at the one at John, I could see where that could go either way, but not in my grading, John. It's not going to go either way. But you know I'm a tyrant on my grading anyway. But when it comes to this, I'm going to look at the heat again in the AC and see whichever's larger, because the B said to do that. So it makes logic sense when we did the load calculation for this existing dwelling, that if we had to use the standard method, then we would have done that, right? In 220.60, we would have taken the larger of the two. And when we did the optional method, we would have been looking for the larger of the two, the AC versus heat, which one ever was larger. So it stands a reason that the original load calculation for that, whatever that dwelling was, did that. So when we do this and we take that into consideration, now there are some people out there that say, well, it doesn't say anything about AC and heat, so you don't take it into consideration at all. I happen to disagree with that, because if the load is there, what tells me that I don't have to take it into consideration? I've got to take it into consideration. So I would put it under the appliance, and you just simply take the nameplate. And if the heat or the AC, whichever one is larger, I would go with the larger. Now, some people also argue that it doesn't give that diversity in here, so it wants you to take both of them at 100%. In my opinion, or whether people agree with me or not, I think the original calculation took the larger of the two. So why would I not do this here? Even though it doesn't expressly say anything in here about giving a demand for that, or saying that you can take the larger of the two like it did in B. It doesn't say that in A. But it seems to me that that's the logical way to approach this, because it's still equipment and it's still a load, and it has to be accounted for. So I am not specifically talking about this for exam. I'm talking real world. You need to account for that load. You just can't turn around and say there is no heating and cooling loads. So that's the existing heating and cooling. Okay? All right. So anyway, you go through here and you do your calculations. So let's kind of give you a scenario. All right, this is going to be hard to see. You might have to squint, but I'll talk you through it. And also, folks, this is the same example that is used in Link. So if you've got Link, this is a great example to be able to pull up to kind of help you get centered. Now, if it's an EV, then you just take the nameplate, treat it as an appliance, and add that to your load. One of the questions that was asked is, do I do that at 125%? No, that is for the branch circuit to the load in 625 for the EV. That is treated at 120. It's kind of like a water heater. We do the water heater. Thanks, Mark, for liking the stream. A water heater, it's 125% for the branch, typically, although we know there's some variances in that, but not for the service. Service is just take the value from the plate, right? So same concept here for that. So let's look at our layout here. So our existing dwelling is 100 amp service. And a 20 by 20 addition is going to be added onto this building. Again, it could be extra loads like EV or some other piece of equipment. We're just going to use an addition. So it's going to add additional load, not only square footage wise, but also we have some other circuits that are going to be in there that we have to take into consideration. Okay. All right. So it's a 20 by 20 addition. And we're also going to add a second laundry to this. All right. So and it's going to be added onto the existing dwelling. Now, we have to determine now if the capacity of that service is okay for the new addition and the new circuits that are going to be added. All right. So the first step we would do is follow the rules in 220.83a. And we have to calculate the existing before we add any of the new loads. So you're going to go around, get your stuff together, and let's start looking at the dimensions here, okay? So, and this is, it says 20 by 20. I don't think that's right. I think I made a boo-boo in this. Let's go back real quick to the NEC and go to the example. I want to make sure, because again, I tried to get this ahead of time, and I am not immune from boo-boo. So let's do it here. And I know there'll be my critics out there who say they can do it better, but we'll wait and see your video. Let's see here. Let's see, where are we at here? 220. And let's see, optional. So right here in existing, y'all can see that. And this was the example here. So I don't know how well y'all aren't going to be able to see this here. So we're going to get the dimensions here. So I want to make sure that I get this right. Now, if you look in here, if I zoom in, if I can zoom in, I don't know how far they'll let me go. All right, notice that they say it's a 20 by 20 foot addition, but the original house, the original structure is 24 by 40. That's the original structure. Okay, so I wanted to clarify in case anybody went looking and saw that, they know what we're talking about. Okay, let's go back to the lesson. So I just wanted to zoom in on it. Okay, so the original structure is 24 by 40. So we got to do the math. So 24 by 40 is 960 square feet. And of course, y'all all know that it's 3 VA per square foot for a dwelling. Okay, 220.14J. And so that is 2,880 VA. So that's your square footage for the existing building. That's your 3 VA. Good so far. Next, small appliance branch circuits, where we're going to have a given that there's 3 of them in there. There's the minimum of 2, and then there's a third one in there. So we're going to say it's 3. We walked around and did our math, and it is 3 small appliance branch circuits. So that's 1,500 VA times 3, and that is 4,500 VA. So we accounted for it. And where would I do this in real world? I would go to the panel, and hopefully it's labeled, we hope, and do it that way. Otherwise, you're going to have to work it out and to find out what your small appliance branch circuits are. 3 of them in ours. It has a laundry circuit, 1,500 VA again, 210.11C, 2 gives you that. And then, of course, we've got the range. And again, these are just nameplates. These are all the things that are in existing dwelling. And that is 10.5 kW, so it's 10,500 VA. Then we have the water heater, which is odd, which is a 3 kW. It's kind of an odd water heater, but anyway, that's 3,000 VA. And total existing load. And in this example that they give you here, they don't add any air conditioning. Now that's the weird part about this when you look at the handbook. Okay, so I'm gonna bring it back to the NEC when you can, not the handbook, but the link. They don't talk about anything to do with the air conditioning. And I literally do not see how you can discard an actual load. So we're going to use their example that it doesn't have any air conditioning, and we're going to do it this way. It was an old home. It's a 100 amp service. It didn't have any air conditioning because the minute we're going to add some air conditioning to this. It's like they remodeled their house, they added addition, and then they're like, ooh, we need to get modern. We need to put some air conditioning in there. But for me, one of the problems with this exercise here in Link is that there is no AC or heat mentioned in the first one. But if I'm telling you, if there is in your calculation, you need to take it into consideration because it is a load. And I would do it under the appliances for that. And you just take the nameplate, and I would take whichever's larger, heat or AC. That's how I would address it, because that's how we address it in the standard method, and that's how we address it in the optional method. Okay? Just wanted to make that clear before I went on. All right, so we add all these up. We get 22,380 VA. So that's the existing. Okay, that's the existing. Thanks, Francisco, for liking the stream. Appreciate you. All right, so that's the existing load. Now, we're now going to find out what this addition contributes. All right, so the addition was a 20 by 20 addition, and it's adding a new laundry circuit. Okay, so here's the steps. 20 by 20, that's 400 square feet times 3 VA per square foot. We know that in 220.14J. And so that's 1,200 VA. The laundry circuit, the additional one, is 1,500 VA. We get it. We add these two together, and that's 2,700 VA. So we have the existing values, which was 22,380, and we have the new contribution, which is 2,700. Okay. So now what do? Well, step 3 tells us to do this. The first 8,000, and this is in your code book, and this is the table. It says the first 8 kVA of that load is taken at 100%. So you're basically going to take 8,000 of that value, and you're going to sit it aside. Just sit it aside. The remaining value is going to be, you're going to take it at 40%. So if you see here, the 22,380, which is the original load calculation that we did, right? It's the original load. And then we add the 2,700 to it. That gave us 25,080 VA. So that's the combined loads, okay? And then what we do is we take that 8 away and set it to the side. We're going to add it back where we set it to the side. And then the remainder is 17,080, and we take that at 40% because that's what table 220.83a tells us to do, right? So then that's 6,832. So what do? We take that 8,000, we add it back to that 6,832. That gives us 14,832. And then as you guessed, at this point, we take that 14,832, divide it by 240 volts, because that's what the system is. And that gives me 61.8 amps. We round that because it's a 0.5 and greater. What do? We round up. So now we've got 62 amps. Now think about this. If all we were doing is taking this load on this old dwelling that's 100 amps, we're adding a new addition, we're modernizing it a little bit. It's a 100 amp service. Well, the calculation using this method only gives us 62 amps, and we've got room to spare. We're well under 100. So we're okay, even with these new loads added. So if you look at it this way, you're able to add additional loads, this additional 20 by 20 addition, and that laundry circuit, you're able to add it to it. You would do the same thing, and this is for the person that submitted the question. You would do the exact same thing by simply adding your other loads in that are specific loads, right? Like your EV, things like that, okay? Same way. Now, the 100 amp existing is fine for those additional contributions. It's not going to have any problem. You can go with the 100. Everything is still good, no problem. Now, what if we don't, in our case, we're going to use the example that's in Link that NFPA put out. And again, I told you how I would address it if you had existing AC and heating loads. Theirs didn't, so they didn't address it. So now, what if they're going to put that addition in and they got wise? They said, you know what? Let's go on and add air conditioning, 5 kW air conditioning, okay? Now, if they add heat or air conditioning, you're going to take whichever one's the larger, right? Because that's what it said at the top of 220.83b. It says, take whichever's larger. right? Okay, so that's what they're going to do. So let's look over here. So air conditioning, you take it at 100. Central electric space heating, you take it at 100. And if it's less than 4 separately controlled space heating units, like baseboard heating, that type of thing, then you take it at 100. And then, of course, the first 8 of the other loads is at 100%, and the remainder of the other loads at 40%. Okay, so let's see how we do this. So we've got our dwelling, same dwelling we had before, nothing's changes, but now they wised up and said, you know what, maybe I better put some air conditioning in this building. Okay, so the codes are the same, the rules are the same here. It's 3 VA per square foot. We already know what that is, we've done that. 1,500 VA for each 2-wire small appliance and laundry, we get it. And again, the nameplate from all appliances that are fastened in place, permanently connected, or located on a specific circuit. Okay, so that's going to pick up your EV, that type of thing. Then we've got ranges, wall mount ovens, counter mounted cooking unit. If they were adding any of those, you know, that's still going to be part of our existing dwelling. This is all existing stuff. Clothes dryers again, and of course water heaters. So let's take this math and do what we would do if we're going to add some air conditioning to this building. All right, so it's the same building. But in addition to that added floor space and laundry circuit, in addition, they've decided in their infinite wisdom to add a 5 kVA or 5,000 VA 240-volt air conditioner unit. And it's going to be installed. Okay, well, the first step is to do what we did a second ago. We have to come up and find out what the existing loads are. And we did that. That was 22,380. We've already been through that. Same dwelling, same condition. Next, we need to determine the new loads to the dwelling. Now, we did that a minute ago when it was 2,700, but we didn't have any air conditioning on it. So let's work this out. So let's see, we're gonna 20 by 20, that's 400 square feet, 3 VA per square foot, that is 1,200 VA. Then we have that added laundry circuit, that is 1,500 VA, okay? And then we have added air conditioning unit at 5,000, right? So we're gonna follow the rules here and see what we've got here. And let's kind of tag along and see what we get. And also, let's go back to the NFPA version so that you can see what their version looks like in that. Because I always like to go back to Link. If you haven't gotten Link yet, it's an amazing resource to have. All right, so I'm back over here at Link. And let's go to their example. And you'll see, same thing we just did here. We didn't change anything, right? So again, all of this application, the first 8,000. All right, well, after we did this, let's go on back to our example because I think mine's better, although I don't know which one's better for you to see. Might be the one on the screen might be better for you to see. So I'll leave this one up if you think this one's clearer for you. So again, we took the existing loads, was 22,380. And we're going to determine the new one. You see here, we did 20 by 20. That's 1,200. We add the laundry, which is 1,500 VA. And then the air conditioning load is 5,000 VA. Now, step 3, follow the steps. So 100% of the added air conditioned equipment, that is 5,000, right? And then, of course, what you've got is the first 8 kVA of the other loads is 8,000. So the 8,000 we already know. And then what? You had 17,080 left times 40%, right? And that was 6,832. So one of the things you don't want to lose in here is that we took these values and we took the 5,000 at 100%. And then we took the other 8,000, all that, the demand factors applied to it, but not that air conditioning. You take it at 100%, right? That's what we want to make sure that we're clear on, all right? So let's do the math here. Got your calculators? So let's do the 5,000 for the AC. So 5,000 plus the first 8 kVA at 100%, so that's 8,000. So I just add 8,000 to it. So that's 13 so far. And then we did the remainder at 40%. So remember, the existing load was 22,380. Then we added the additional loads of 2,700. That's for the laundry and for the 3 VA per square foot for the 20 by 20 space. Okay, those are the ones that the demands can apply to, not the AC. So we still have that 2,700 right here. And then we added them together, which is 25,080 VA in case you wanted to add them together. And then we take 8 away from that. And that leaves me at 17,080. And again, the remainder over the 8,000 at 40%. And that gave me 6,832. And then you add them all up. The 5,000, the 8,000, which is that 100% of the first 8. And then the 40% of the remainder was 6,000. So I'm going to add that 6,832 to it. Okay. So I've got 5,000 plus 8,000 plus 6,832. That equals 19,832. Okay. Now, one other thing that you could have done, as you probably figured out by now, you could have done the other one, and when you came up with the total, just add 5,000 to it because it's 100%. You don't. The air conditioning or the heating is not part of the demand, the 40%. Okay, you take it at 100%. So you could have done the first one, and then somebody come along and said, "I want to add air conditioning." Then you could have just added that 5 to the end result of the other one, and it would have given you the same value. Now, when we did that, let's go back to the lesson. When we did that, then it was 19,832 divided by 240. That was 82.6 amps, rounded to 83. Still okay to add that 5,000 for the air conditioning. It's still okay to do that. And the laundry circuit, adding the additional laundry circuit, still good. You could have done that. And also, all of the existing loads would have been fine as well. So the 100 amp would have still been perfectly fine for that. Okay. Now, one other thing that you can do, what's up, Orlando? Thank you for liking the stream. I appreciate it. One other thing that you can apply here, and I know for a fact this is going to be hard for you to see, so probably it's easier if I go to the code. I'm working the bugs out, folks. Let's go to the code. Is this one here? And I will see if I can't blow it up a little bit. Determining existing loads. So this is an application where you want to know what your existing loads are, and maybe you're having trouble doing a calculation. Well, one thing you could do here is the calculation of the feeder or service load for existing installations shall be permitted to use actual maximum demand to determine the existing load under the following conditions. So if we're trying to find out what the existing load is, then we can do what? We can get the maximum demand data available for 1 year from the utility, if they'll give it to you. We do have an exception here which allows for lesser time than 1 year. But generally, get the data for 1 year. It gives you an idea of what your demand load is. Okay, and you want to take whatever the maximum is of your period of 1 year. And you take it, and then you would take that maximum, okay, that you got from the utility, and you take it at 125%. So whatever that maximum demand is from the utility that they give you, multiply that by 125%, plus you add any of the new loads, okay? So it says plus any new loads does not, and when you add those new loads to it, like the EV charger, when you add that to it, it cannot exceed the ampacity of the existing feeder or whatever the rating is of the service, right? So you're using historical data from the utility, and they'll give you, take the peak or the maximum demand, do it at 125%, and then look at the size of the feeders, if you have feeders, or look at the size of the service. If it doesn't exceed that, with all your new loads added onto it, then your service is going to be okay, right? Now, it also just reminds you that the feeder, if you have a feeder involved here, it says a feeder has overcurrent protection in accordance with 240.4, and the service has overload protection in accordance with 230.90. Okay, so as long as you have your overload protection for your service application or your overcurrent protection for feeder applications, and as long as your maximum demand at 125% plus any of the new loads that you're adding doesn't exceed the ampacity of the service or the feeder, depending on what you're working with, then you're okay for those new loads. This one is difficult because trying to get data from the utility, but again, it does offer you some other recording devices and things like this. Now remember, you don't get to use this exception if you do things like load shedding or you're using some kind of energy management system, then you can't use this exception. But most residential applications are not going to use this exception, okay? Or not going to have load shedding maybe, or not going to have, I guess they could have load shedding if they have a generator and they got loads, but not in our example because it's a 100 amp service, probably not going to have all that. But anyway, those are another option you have. For me, personally, I'm probably going to just do a 220.82 calculation again, personally. Probably just going to take the new loads as if this was a brand new building and gather all my info. And I'm probably just going to do a new calculation. It's probably what I would do. But I do have the ability to use 220.83 A and B. And it also brings me to a point. If I were to do this calculation as a 220.82, then I most certainly have to take heating and AC into consideration. So I don't necessarily like the example in Link because I think it could mislead people, right? Are we to begin to think that I can go in and do an existing dwelling and do this load calculation to add more circuits, but I don't have to take the heating and air conditioning into consideration? I do not think that cannot be what is the intent of that one. So I think it's just their example. Now, other people will raise a question, is the HVAC and all, are they appliances? Well, they typically are made in standardized sizes and types and all. So I think the intent for is to treat it as such. Otherwise, your calculation's going to be skewed in the process, right? Okay, agree to disagree. That's okay if you don't agree with me. All right. With that said, anybody have any other questions? And I'll turn y'all loose for the first night. A little bit bumpy here. Sorry for all the switching. By the way, my screen hasn't blacked out again since then, so I don't know what the deal is with that, but it has done it before. Anyway, anybody have any questions? Feel free. With that, John, I'll have to look deeper into that one, John. It might be just caught me, but that question might be just a wonky question, but I never really gave it much thought. I'm still a belief that it's a 15 amp rated device since it's really in chapter 5. And it does say the branch circuit cannot exceed or be less than the rating of the device. So I guess you could argue that it could be a 20 amp circuit, okay? Under that. The problem is you can't use B2, and so that limits the amount of load that you can put on it. So it's crazy. We'll look at it. Maybe I'm just missing it. Okay. Let's see here. We got a question. Jason. Jason, hey, welcome. I didn't see you come in. Jason says Article 220.44 states that I can use Table 220.42 or Table 220.44 to calculate receptacles. What situations will allow me to use Table 220.42 for receptacles? Let's go to it real quick. If I've got it right here. And also, Russ, yes, the new format. If you had come to Wednesday nights, you'll see that I said that we have migrated away from the Zoom, and we're now doing it live, but you have to send your questions in at least 24 hours in advance if they're from the Fast Trax, so that I can put together an entire little lesson on it for you. And that's what's changing, is I want to be able to do little lessons on things for stuff. So let's see here. All right, let me go to this real quick, John. Did John ask that? You didn't ask that. Who asked that? Jason asked that. Sorry, Jason. All right. So the question was, for those that can see it on the screen, 440 states, let's look at 420, let's look at this verse. Okay, so this is receptacles other than dwellings. Okay, so 220.44, other than dwellings, and I don't know the situation. I know that most commercial buildings, banks, things like that, are going to typically try to use 220.44 for their receptacles. When it says it could use table 220.42, if you look at 220.42, it covers things like hotels and motels, warehouses, and things like that. So it does more than just dwelling units for that application. Because you got to remember, 220.44 isn't for dwelling units. So, but it is other areas like a warehouse, for example, would be able to fall into that factor for receptacles. So, and it's the best example I can give to you. I never use 220.42 when I'm dealing with an other than a dwelling. It's always used 220.44. So I can't think of any scenario where I would want to use table 220.42 for this when it comes to the receptacles when it is non-dwelling applications. But the only ones that fall in 220.42 as non-dwelling would be hotels and motels. They're non-dwelling. Warehouses, they're non-dwelling. So I would think that that's I think, here, when you're doing it up here, this incorporates receptacle loads. And down here, you might get a bigger demand factor for an excessive amount of receptacle loads. So they're saying you could use either one if either one would yield you a better result. But I think most of us always use 220.44. At least that's the one that I always used. And in exams, typically, when they're talking about office buildings or something like that, they're expecting you to use 220.44. That's where they're expecting you to go. I'll try to think of some locations where it might behoove us to use 220.42 for it. But again, it's this is for other than dwellings. So this table right here, this whole thing right here, if I can pop it up real quick here. Let's go. Y'all not seeing it. That's why I'm talking to myself. Y'all, this right here. So this table right here, here's 220.42. This is for the dwellings. And all of these here are other than dwellings. So if this yields a better result, right, then you can use it for those other than dwellings that are in that table. But I think the majority of the time right here in 220.44, I think majority of the time when it comes to receptacles for non-dwelling applications, we're going to use this table right here. First 10,000 at 100% and the remainder over that at 50%. I think it's going to yield you the best result. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any that table 220.42 would yield you a better result for that. Let's see here. Any other questions in there? Let's see here. Hold on, John. What does John say? In my old one, I used to bring this sucker onto the screen. I can't do that anymore here, but y'all can see it, but my eyes are terrible. It says, after reading it many times, it's clear. The amp rating of the receptacle, cannot be less than the overcurrent protective amp rating, so it could only be 15 amp circuit. I think that's what I was saying, but John, you had me starting to think about it again, so don't do that to me. I'm getting too damn old for that, but I could tell from my experience in that application when we're dealing in 520 as supplements and modifies 1 through 4. So again, always been a 15 amp device, a 15 amp overcurrent protective device in the movies, theaters, television studios, things like that. So maybe I'll examine it even more and we'll do it for another lesson or something like that. But at any rate, and also guys, since this is not a show for everybody, this is really for the students and people that want to join us, I might do a lesson. I'll try to dig in it and see if I can't find some valid examples where maybe for a warehouse or a hotel or motel, maybe corridor receptacles, when 220.42 may be more beneficial than 220.44. I've never had it be beneficial. So maybe I'll look into that for an upcoming episode. Also, real quick, folks, while I've got you here, I want to take you real quick to let you know that, let's see here. This is our website. For those that are not familiar with the website, all the courses are listed right here on the front. If you're looking from a mobile device, it's simplified. Keep him guessing. That's right. Then you can get to everything here. And I just wanted to draw folks' attention to the blogs real quick. We have some really good blogs here on all bunch of different topics, many different ones. Actually, I think there's like 8-9 pages full of them now. Calculations for bus bars, for those out there that want a good read. Here's a question that I debated on with the NICA question of the day, probably disagreed to it, and that's why I did an article. Here's one on voltage drop, variable frequency drives explained, all kinds of things here. Effective value or root mean square explained. A bunch of good stuff here. So if y'all haven't checked out our blogs, do me a favor, take the time, check out our blog if you're new to the channel. So coping with failure. Hey, I'm going to read that tonight, John, so that I can cope with the failure that I had tonight. Overload protection versus overcurrent protection. Again, mobile home calculations, sizing wireways, installing conductors in existing raceways, what you would do for all that. So check that out. Also, if you want to get to Fast Trax Tube, then you just go to fasttraxtube.com if you want to watch some of those videos. That's pretty cool. I'd go there, but it'd probably kick us off because I'm having that kind of trouble tonight. So I'm not going to go there. What else do we got? Oh, free courses. We still have some free courses out there, folks, for folks here. You have the electrical exam primer. You just click on that. And I'm already logged in, so I can start now for that. But to kind of give you an idea what it looks like, well, I'm not in. It's going to make me log in. I don't want to log in. But here you can see what it's all about. Let's see here. Let's go back to some more free courses. And there's another one that's boxes and enclosures right here. That's a free course. Doesn't cost you anything. Feel free to go there and give that a shot. You get a certificate at the end if you actually pass the quiz. So check that out. And also, folks, we do have our budget course up for those that don't want the reviews that we do, commentary reviews, things like that. Then we've got a budget course as well. And that is basically the same Fast Trax. It's just you don't get the competency reviews. You don't get all the questions. You get 100 questions. That's all you get. But it's half the price for those that are interested in it. That type of thing. Okay. Enough of that. Enough of selling. Let me bring it back to me. All right. So I totally blew this agenda. Didn't even follow it. John got me riled up. I know I'm going to have to go back and read that damn section again just so I can make sure I'm clear what I've been saying all along about 15 and 15 to make sure that I ain't wrong, because that's what I've always said. And John's tried to clarify that he thinks it is now 15-15. So see what you done, John. I was starting to grow some hair, but now it's falling out again. So, hey, folks, I appreciate you joining me. Hopefully you got something out of it. Next week, we'll do another lesson. Remember, Fast Trax students, please do me a favor. Send your information ahead of time so I can research it. That's the whole purpose that I wanted to do this, was to be able to provide you the content and go deep into it and give you accurate information on that type of thing, okay? Still love the questions. Keep firing them. But on that scenario, so that I can go deep into the course, I want to be able, and I don't even have time to go into the Fast Trax tonight because I ran out of time. I don't want it to be a long show, that type of thing. So anyway, that's all I've got, folks. I appreciate you coming. First show, obviously shaky. Dude, I'm just an electrician. That's all I am. All right. Till next time, folks, I appreciate you. Stay safe. God bless, and all of you that joined us tonight. Catch us next week. Remember, Fast Track students, send it ahead of time so I can make it a feature on the show and I can answer your questions live. Till next time, stay safe. God bless.